the big collectible and memorabilia news from this past weekend. There were a couple things. There was a PSA 8 mantle that sold for, I believe it was $1.3 million. That's a big deal. The other was another Yankees legend, the Babe Ruth called shot jersey, sold for $24 million. 24.1, I believe, was the exact number. And this ended up getting picked up by a couple different places. ESPN was talking about it. And this is obviously the biggest piece of sports memorabilia that's ever sold. It kind of blows a lot of the other big jerseys that have sold out of the water, to be honest. And there, like I said, there was a little bit of controversy. I actually didn't talk about this jersey leading up to the sale because there was a couple different people that were saying that the jersey actually wasn't authentic and that, you know, it wasn't the jersey that everyone's saying that it was. So I didn't really talk about it, to be honest, because I don't know. I wanted to see if there was going to be more information coming out about the jersey, which really there wasn't. I mean, it really just came down to one company saying that it wasn't, and one company, a sports authentication company, saying that it wasn't the jersey that everyone said it was, and then a bunch of other companies saying that it was. So I don't know. It's interesting when it gets to that point where you have to submit it to multiple, which they did. I think they submitted it to multiple. So like the fact that one said, like, I don't know, I'm not sure. It's maybe similar to grading in a way, because there's no real way, which is authenticating and grading, obviously basically the same thing, but it came down to one, like I said, one company saying it was what it was, and then the other company saying that it wasn't. Similar to when you get a card graded and you could send it to 3 or 4 or 5 different graders, and they're all going to give it a different grade just based on how they're looking at it. So kind of similar. I mean, obviously it's photo matching, so it's going to be different than actual grading of a card. But now we have, and I don't even know. Now we have the most expensive piece of memorabilia, and it's like, I don't even know what you would do with something like this. Like $24 million for this. I'm guessing, at least I hope that it's going in some sort of museum. I hope that whoever bought the jersey comes out and says who it was. Like, it almost feels like if we even start to try to do some statistics here, there isn't really that many people that could have bought this jersey. I saw people when I was talking about this on Hobby Hotline, like there was a name that kept floating around of, I guess there's a notorious memorabilia dealer who owns a lot of high-end memorabilia. I forget what his name was, to be honest, but I know that there was like a couple people that were like joking, like, hey, sit this one out, all these types of things. So maybe it was that person that buys a lot of high-end memorabilia. This isn't like, and I know I've talked about NFTs and crypto maybe more than people would want to hear, but with that stuff, if you buy something, your name then gets attached to that item. And with the blockchain, and I don't know, I use quotations, but it's also not quotations. But with the blockchain, that's just how that works. Like, everybody has sort of an account, and it all runs on this one thing, which is, to be honest, I guess I wish sports cards was like this, but I understand why it probably will never be and isn't. Because if we could see who bought this, I don't know, maybe that would be a bad precedent for, I guess, like the items in general. Like, maybe someone who bought this for $24 million, like, maybe they don't want to be known that they bought it. But at the same time, it's like, I kind of want to know who was the person that bought it. I think we're still waiting on more info. And that was, I mean, there was couple other auctions this past weekend. And I talked about the PSA 8 mantle. And I mean, I guess honestly, I'm going to move on to this like second piece of the top, or second part of the show today. Because I think you're going to find probably tons of people talking about that mantle, or the called shot jersey. You probably will see people talk about this mantle card, but the other piece, the other I don't know, big auction this past weekend was through Heritage Auctions, and there was a 1.3 million, or no, sorry. Yeah, $1.3 million, which is not the highest for a PSA 8 mantle, but it is close. The highest price of a PSA 8 mantle was 1.5. So 1.3, 1.5. I still think that's very close. And the 1.5 was back in 2022. So that was sort of at like the height. So I actually think that bodes pretty well for the PSA 9 that sold for, I believe that was 5.2. Because I think a lot of people probably looked at that purchase, not at the time. In retrospect, I think people were looking at that purchase and saying, the 5.2 seems pretty high, which, again, that would probably make the PSA 10 if there's only 3 of those. If one of those were to ever sell, that would probably sell, some were saying, in the 25 to 30 range, which is what people sort of thought about this Ruth jersey. I saw 30 is the number that I saw floating around on a lot of different publications. And I think it sort of gets into the concept of like, are market projections actually accurate? And should they really exist, to be honest? Like that's a conversation I think is important to have, and one that I've had on this podcast a couple times with just different items that, like the Babe Ruth card that people said was going to be the most expensive sports card of all time. It was going to sell for $12 million or whatever. And it didn't, it sold for like, I think it was 3 or 4. If it was 3 or 4, I don't even remember what the exact number was, but it wasn't even close to what the highest price was. But with this mantle card, like I said, over the years, it's been pretty stable, going up basically from, let's see, from 2020. Well, and it's up from its 2023 price too. So I don't know, maybe it has fluctuated a little bit more than I'm sort of alluding to, but there was a 2023 price of just basically just flat $1 million. So it's gone up, 300 for almost $400,000. Now, actually more like a little bit less than $300,000, just looking at the two prices, which I guess then you could look at it and say, well, it's also down from its highest of the 1.5. So it's down $200,000. So I don't know. I think you could look at it both ways. And I think it's a good thing that a card can still be sustaining, because it's really, I think it's one of the only cards, if I'm going to be honest, that has really sustained its price at the level that it has. Because if you look at like a lot of Tom Brady cards, or you look at a lot of like the LeBron James cards, any of the exquisites, or any of like, Brady's rare autos, or any, I think it was the Contenders auto for Brady, those were selling in the same range as this PSA 8 mantle. And I don't know what exactly has to happen for those prices to go down and then for this one to stay pretty the same, because that's sort of what happened. Like, those prices have taken a pretty significant decrease, where the mantle has pretty much stayed right on track. I don't know if it could be that the mantle has been sort of the holy grail of the hobby and sports cards for so long. And so people, and there are a lot less of them, to be honest. Like with the LeBron card, there's the 99. So with this mantle card, I believe that there's 3 PSA 10s. I think there's 6 PSA 9s. And then these PSA 8s, I'm imagining there's probably in the 10 to 20 range, probably no higher than that, if I'm going to be honest. But so maybe that could be the reason. But the card has just sustained its value better than any other card in the hobby. So, if you, I don't know, investing, like, and I've talked about this in the past, I don't know how much investing necessarily in sports cards nowadays is as prevalent as it used to be. I actually think that the investing that people used to talk about so frequently really was just buying and selling. I think the long-term investment in sports cards is not super existent anymore. Like the content about it, at least, for sure. But like for this card, for example, if you had invested in the card, you are sitting around the same. But even if you bought the card and it really comes down to when you bought it. Like if you bought it in 2023, you're up. But if you bought it in 2022, you are down. Or if you bought it in 2021, you're up. Or, we're going to see what the next price of this card is. I thought that there would be a PSA 10 of this card sold after the PSA 9 sold, and there was all that buzz around the price. That never accumulated. That never happened, unfortunately. And I don't know if it'll ever happen. I mean, I think one of the owners is, I think he's one of the owners of the Diamondbacks, I think, or the Rockies. Like, I know that at one point they had an armored truck during the All-Star game bring that card, and people were seeing the card on display at the All-Star game, which was really cool in Colorado. So two, big auctions that ended this past weekend that for their own specific reasons, I think are important bookmarks, maybe milestones. I don't know the exact word that I'm looking for. It's an important sale for the hobby and an important weekend that was big for memorabilia and for cards. So, like I mentioned on yesterday's episode, there was actually some pretty decent stories that kind of dropped like at the end of last week that I wasn't able to touch on the podcast. For one of them, it was some images for Topps Chrome football, Topps composite football, because I remember, I don't know, maybe last week when I was talking about Fanatics, and one of the big stories that was coming out from the show. Sorry. On the marquee, they had the CJ Stroud. It was a CJ Stroud base rookie card. And for me, I was like, well, that's weird that they haven't announced, if they're coming out with a base product for football, it's just weird that they haven't announced that that's going to be the product. And the other kind of piece of this, I mean, I'm mainly going to be talking about Topps Chrome football in this episode, or at least, not Topps Chrome. I keep calling it Topps Chrome. Topps composite football. And I'll explain what that is in a second. We have started to see some other Topps Chrome basketball products, because I'm trying to just tie in the unlicensed aspect of both of these products. We have seen some images have been kind of floating around of some of the big cards. I mean, some of the chase cards, some of the one of ones, and they look okay. I don't know. I think that I don't love that Topps kind of, it almost seems like they jumped the gun here with some of these products. Like, I understand that they need to get the autographs of all the people that they put into their exclusive deals. I understand that they need to do that, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like the products. I think that they're jumping the gun overall. And I think that if they had just waited, I don't think there would have been any problem in just waiting, but they have to get those autographs in. So that's why they're doing this. I think that's fairly obvious now, I think, at this point, why they're coming out with this product, especially so now we'll jump back to Topps composite football. Composite football is basically going to be Panini Chronicles for Topps. I don't know. I don't know if other composite products have been released. I don't think so, because for the most part, from all the images we saw from the composite football, it was like Topps Chrome, just base. There was a Topps Chrome Black product in there. I saw a Topps Finest in the video. So they have to get these autos into the product. I think it is unfortunate that they signed these players and that they took away some pretty important cards. And I think if you look at the overall business move of signing the players to the exclusives, I don't like it. I don't think that they really, I don't know. I'm not sure if they should exist, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I don't think, and maybe that's similar to the exclusive licenses. I think that I would have to take a little bit more time to think about, probably, if I think the exclusive licenses should exist. I do think that the exclusive autographs, I don't know. I don't think that those should exist, because, and especially, well, not especially, but I think, unfortunately, what has happened this year and then this upcoming year for football, we're going to see some bad football products over these next couple of years from Panini in these last few years that they have. And, credit to Panini. They've kind of stood tight, or stood tall. I think that's maybe what I meant to say. They've stood tall, and they haven't bent to what Fanatics and Topps are trying to do. Like, because it would have been very easy for them to just say, okay, we'll just sell to Fanatics. That's what Topps did. Topps was just like, well, Fanatics is going to come in and do what they want anyways, so we're just going to give it to them. We'll just give them what they want here. Like, it's unfortunate what they've done with football, because we aren't going to have Prism autos. We're not going to have National Treasures autos. We're not going to have any Contenders autos, which are like, these are some of the biggest cards in the hobby, and we're just not going to have them because Topps came over the top and said, we want the licenses for these players. Because if I had to imagine, it's probably because they assume that, they took the licenses, they took which that also, I was talking to Victor from True Rookie Cards. We were on Hobby Hotline over this past weekend, and he was talking about the lawsuit that Fanatics, or not that Fanatics, but that the PA and Panini went through, because the NFLPA, and I don't know about the NBA PA, but I know the NFLPA, they just were like, yeah, we're just tossing this contract out the window, and we're just going to sign for more money with Topps when it comes to exclusives and autographs. And I think that is unfortunate. I think the exclusive autographs, the products, like I said, I still have to think about that a little bit. If I think exclusive, I kind of am leaning on the, like, no, I don't think they should exist. Like, I think any company should be allowed to come in, and if they can make a good product, they should be able to be a contender here. Similar with, football, the Madden. Like, if a company can come in and create a game that's better than Madden, they should be allowed to. Like, there shouldn't just be a contract that says, just because we own this thing, you can't make something of it. I think in some circumstances that is a fair business opportunity, fair business move. But I think when it comes to sports cards, all it's really doing is making football cards this year really stink because, like I said, to not have Will Levis, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. Yeah. To not have them in any Contenders autos, to not have any Prism autos, to not have any National Treasures RPAs. I think we're going to look back at this in a couple of years, and it's going to be very disappointing we didn't have any of those players with those cards. And I don't know if it's going to affect the overall market, but to only have autos for these players within a unlicensed product, it just doesn't. It seems like it's like, what's it even? Is it even worth it? Like, is it even, if you're Topps and if you're Fanatics and you're coming in and you're saying that you're going to 10x the hobby, what does that really mean? Because I think for me, taking those exclusives and taking away the chance for collectors to collect any of those autographed cards for football, you're kind of doing a little bit of a disservice, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I wish that they would at least have licensed out in one or two products. Like, at least let them do Contenders, or at least let them do National Treasures. Like, Topps should have let Panini come out with what are some of the best football cards every year. And it's like, is it going to help? Is it going to hurt Panini? Yeah, probably. Is it going to hurt them in the sense that, like, they aren't going to sell these products? No, probably not. Like, it's going to hurt Panini overall in the landscape, I think, in the last few years of the hobby. Does it hurt the bottom line for Panini? I think it potentially could, but I also look at it and say, they're not hurting. They're not, just because they don't have one sport's biggest athlete, which that also is the case for basketball too. Wembanyama not being in there, and I'm not going to really talk about that one talk about Wembanyama specifically, but I think not having those players in football products with autographs is kind of a disservice for the hobby. I do think so, and I think it's unfortunate that was a move that Fanatics and Topps and Michael Rubin decided this is a good idea. Like, that's not, like, we obviously know that saying they're going to 10x the hobby, they do mean the hobby, but they also mean Fanatics. Like, they're not, we're not delusional here. I'm not delusional to say that I think that Fanatics is going to make the best move for their company 9 times out of 10 rather than what's actually good for the hobby. Because if it's actually what's good for the hobby, they wouldn't have signed those players to exclusives, and they would have let them be in any of these big products that should have autographs. Like that would have, I guess, 10x. I mean, not really 10x, but it's not. It's almost taking a step back when it comes to this. And what? So now they're going to come out with some Topps composite, which is just like, it almost seems like they are rubbing their faces in it, coming out with a product like this. Also, why are we? The new NFL season is about to start. Why are we still coming out with Bryce Young Bryce Young rookie cards? Which this is, I don't think people are going to consider this a rookie card, really. Like, to me, we are already in the next season. And this is not a product that is going to have massive patches or massive like cards that you need a bunch of manufacturing to them. Like, these are just base cards. So like, what was the holdup here? Like, why were we waiting? Like, was this like a last minute decision that they said, oh, shoot, we still have all these autographs? Like, have there even been any Will Levis autographs, to be honest? Like, that's one thing. Like, sure, there's been Topps now, CJ Stroud, and I believe there was a couple Bryce Young cards, and there's been other, draft products with their autographs in it. But they're all print on demand. Like, there hasn't really been a product, or you know what? Actually, I think Bryce Young was in a Topps product because he threw out the first pitch. No, sorry, that's CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud did that, and I don't know. It's not that it's necessarily unfortunate. It's that I just wish that Fanatics, when they say they're going to 10x the hobby, this is not coming out with an unlicensed product a year after it should have been released is not the correct move. And I don't know whose decision it was, but I hope that they can take a look at this and, unfortunately, this is going to be the same year that we're going to have this issue for football cards, because I believe Topps signed a lot of the top rookies other than J.J. McCarthy, who now is not going to be playing during his rookie year, which we talked about on a couple episodes ago. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to try and license out National Treasures or to license out any of these brands that Panini has, but they need to do something that's actually going to be good for football cards. Because in my opinion, coming out with this Topps composite product, like a Chronicles product at the start of the next season, really, I don't think was a very good move. All I can say is thank goodness last Thursday, Friday, we got like a pretty sufficient news dump from a couple different companies putting out press releases, putting out news, putting out a couple different things. Because this week has been a little bit slow, at least from what I've seen, which, again, maybe my experience on social media just in general. But I guess maybe it's one of the last pieces of news from last week that I'm going to discuss for this week is going to be the new high grade. Well, I don't know, technically a high grade, but it was one of the Wilt Chamberlain rookie cards. Hold on, I'm pulling up the thing here so I can just at least get the number. A 61-62 Fleer Wilt Chamberlain SGC 10 was graded. This card was apparently found like in the back room of a grocery store is what I've seen on social media, some people talking about. And I believe there's 3 PSA 10s. So if we are talking PSA 10, SGC 10, I think the PSA 10s are probably going to be, they should be more expensive. I think with it being one of, if not the only SGC 10, I think that means that it's I think it's close to those PSA 10 prices. I mean, I would knock probably like 10 to 20% off, just at least from what I've seen. That's like kind of the difference between even some PSA 10s versus SGC 10s, even the 25% dropping down a little bit in price there. But I think, I don't know, SGC has always done kind of a good job, I think, at marketing their service kind of as a vintage service. I believe that either their tagline or a tagline that I've seen from them is that they are the tuxedo of sports cards, or using tuxedo as basically like the tagline for their kind of branding. I think is very smart. I think I like how their slabs look. And if we're talking grading over the past few years, and I don't know, I think it's probably mixed opinions on people's interest in grading, because some people, that's all they do. Some people don't do it at all. So, and I talked about this a little bit on Hobby Hotline over the weekend, and I think the sentiment that you see from, and it could be just that it's the same people every single time that say this, that grading is kind of scammy. I don't know. I don't really necessarily 100% believe that. I think there are aspects, and you probably have heard me talk about things that I don't like within the grading industry. But we have this SGC 10 now of a Wilt Chamberlain, and I can't imagine a card grades higher than that. Or a card that someone is submitting that's a 61, 62 Fleer, which I think that was one of the first. Oh, no, sorry. 48 Bowman with I forget the guy's name. George, I forget the guy's last name, but he was like he actually basically they invented goaltending because of this guy in the league, and he was part of the 48, that first Bowman basketball set. He played for the Lakers. I forget what his last name is, but he's like he's probably one of the more, I think he's actually one of the more iconic, underrated players of all time. Maybe that's why I can't remember his last name. Lakers, George Mikan. I can't believe I forgot that. George Mikan. I think he's probably one of the more underrated players that a lot of people don't know that actually has a lot of influence on the game. Was really kind of one of the most dominant players of that era. Sorry, we'll go back to this Fleer. I think with Wilt Chamberlain too. I mean, icon, just iconic all the way around, on and off the court. So to see one of these cards from 1961 grade so high, it's kind of mind-boggling, to be completely honest, because for a card to be now at this point almost 80 years old, which that's kind of 80, 60 years old. Sorry, not 80, 60 years old. I was trying to do some math there, and math was not mathing. A 60-year-old card, for that to grade an SGC 10, like, it must have been put into some sort of case and then just never touched again, because any cards from that era, it's first of all, the production of those cards. I think we all know that the production of those cards was not at the quality that it is today. And the fact that it must have been in some sort of case also, because, if you had a piece of paper or anything, and I guess maybe it's thicker than paper, but if you had one of those, if you had like a piece of paper, let's just say, hypothetically, you had a piece of paper, for it to be 60 years old is pretty impressive. And for it to be 60 years old and then have it graded and have it come back with what is the highest grade for that company, I think is also pretty impressive. And, we don't know if it's going to be sold. Like, it looked like there was a lot of high-res images, so it seemed like, and it was a big enough card that SGC even put out like a full statement. Like, their CEO, Scott, put out like a full-on, like, went on Twitter 3 minutes, like, talking about the card. So if you haven't seen that, I would definitely suggest go checking out that video also, because this is probably one of the, I would say this year, it's probably one of the most iconic high grades of a card we're going to see in 2024. I don't know if there's any way to know or rank that necessarily, but I think and this is maybe where some sort of database, I don't know exactly. Like, I think PSA, I almost wish that PSA put out more like weekly information about cards that are getting graded. Like, they do put out a lot of, like, if a big card or an important card gets graded, they're like a superfractor of a modern player or something like that, or even some older cards. They do usually put out a little bit of information, but like, if they were to put together like a weekly report, I think that would actually be a really phenomenal piece of content, and one that I think in one way it would be cool content, and I think it would also help the hobby in a way. Like, I don't know, maybe it would even be worth putting out all the cards that were graded into some sort of report. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily possible, because of how many, and maybe it's an SGC thing, to be honest, because a company that does a little bit of smaller numbers, because PSA, obviously the biggest company that's grading and they're going to grade the most amount of cards. So if they were to put together some sort of cool, like some sort of report that just says like, hey, here were or even if it was just all the PSA 10s or all the PSA 9s, or I don't know exactly how they would do it. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if that's like a breach of privacy. I mean, not really, because all of their database is all public information. Maybe if somebody, if you're submitting your cards, I think, I wonder, they must be signing some sort of contract too, if you're getting a card graded that could be posted by their social media. Also, the one thing that I think is underrated that PSA has done as they've started, which this is not a new thing, this is actually like pretty old. Like when I got cards graded like a year ago, it was something that I hadn't seen, but it's now obviously integrated. They started including the photos of the cards, which I think is very smart. I don't know, I guess one thing I've run into is getting card pictures for content for social media. And so, because some of them have, ComC, they have the watermark on all of their cards. So, unfortunately, I'm not using those pictures, but I don't know. I mean, again, I almost wonder if there's because trading card database is like this, but unfortunately, the cards that they have on there, the images are, if I'm going to be honest, they're not the best. Like they're pretty small in size. So if you try to bring up the size, the resolution doesn't usually work very well. But PSA has done, they give you scans of your card in the holder. And like I said, I don't know if PSA or if SGC, I mean, I don't know, Beckett maybe, but I don't think this is even something that Beckett this isn't even on Beckett's radar. This is like an SGC, this is like a content related thing. So it'd be like on Beckett or PSA's radar, if I'm gonna be honest. I don't think BGS would really be interested in this type of thing. Or if they are, I don't know, whatever. But to come out with a full report, I think would be very interesting I don't know. I mean, it might be tough to collect all that data, but they have to have all the data somewhere. So for them to come out with that report, I don't know if that's possible, but I think that would be cool for just to see like people who are interested in the data, just to continue to add more data into the market and, bring this data that in previous years has kind of been hidden almost in a way you could say, but now it's data that is readily available, first of all, and like people like GemRate, they're doing some of, I think, the best work in grading content. They're actually they're really one of the only ones, but they are 100% the best one in grading related content in the sports cards. And overall, I think if they were to come out with more data, maybe more people would be interested in that type of data. But we're seeing that a SGC 10, because then you're going to get the cards and you're going to get more information about cards that have been graded. And I don't know, maybe they don't want to come out with that information, but I think if they were, it would create a new lane within sports cards, and it would give people more data that I think would help them overall in their search for the cards they're looking for, or in their strategy if they're buying and selling cards. All right, so 2 days in a row with a story coming out of SGC. Yesterday, 2 days in a row on the podcast, not 2 days of news in a row necessarily. I don't know, whatever. Yesterday, we talked about the Wilt Chamberlain, the Fleer 1961 Fleer Wilt Chamberlain that just received a SGC 10. And, I gave the grading companies some good ideas on content, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Today, which this is not necessarily new, but today SGC announced they're doing a special on Topps Chrome. Now, from the promotion, this looks like it's all Topps Chrome. It doesn't look like it's just Topps Chrome baseball. It looks like you can get any Topps Chrome graded, because just looking through the cards that they have in this promotion, they've got soccer. They've got 2019 soccer. They also, looks like they have a 2002 Kobe that they're using in this promotion here. They also have the 2009 Topps Chrome Steph Curry, which I guess they are saying you're going to be able to get these cards
graded for $12, and you're going to get a 5 to 10 day business turnaround on these cards. I guess this, I'm not 100% sure. If I had to guess based on this promotion, they probably don't do any type of increase on grading like the way that PSA does, what's it called? It's declared value or whatever. Because if they're promoting it's any Topps Chrome, that would I would assume, or maybe it's just for this promotion potentially. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. But SGC, I think, is kind of showing why they're one of the better graders right now, just overall. And this is what we talked about on yesterday's podcast a little bit about how I thought that I think SGC right now is potentially number 2 behind PSA. I think Beckett will always have a market for autographs and the memorabilia cards, mostly RPAs, maybe not just individual memorabilia cards, or maybe, I don't know. But I think SGC is, I don't even think quietly. I think that they've done such a good job that they are. I think that it's 2 and 2B, or 2A and 2B when it comes to Beckett and SGC right now, where in my opinion, I think SGC is 2A. It's very close between SGC and Beckett, but I think SGC they've done more to get themselves into this top spot than I think Beckett has done to keep themselves in this top spot. And I wouldn't be surprised if Fanatics came in and bought SGC, or because they're already partnered with SGC. And, I guess maybe, I don't know. Actually, maybe they're not technically partnered, because maybe SGC is just doing a Topps Chrome promotion. Because we have seen in the past, they've done, I believe, Bowman Chrome promotions. They've done regular Topps promotions on Topps cards, like Topps Flagship. And I wouldn't be surprised if Fanatics wants to get into grading, which I think on their website, we've seen some cards that have been Fanatics graded, which from what I remember seeing, I think those were just authenticated. I don't think they were graded. But if Fanatics want to come into the grading scene, this is one of the things that with Fanatics, I don't think anything is out of the realm of possibility with their company right now in terms of from a sports card perspective. Because when they decided to get into the game, no one knew that they were going to buy Topps. No one knew that they were going to come in and take all the licenses in one. I keep trying to use words that I think of the word as I'm saying the sentence, and then I forget the word. Hollowed night. I don't think that's the word, but one night in December back in 2021, they were just yeah, we're going to be in control of what goes on in the hobby now by buying the MLB license, which that essentially then got them Topps, because Topps was going to go public in a SPAC. But then because they weren't going to have their biggest license, their stock wasn't really worth what they expected it to be completely honest. It's kind of I don't know. Some people look at it and say it's probably unfortunate. I think that I've said in the past, I think these exclusive licenses, I don't know if I love them that much, because I think if you have one company who is in charge of every single big release in the hobby, you're really relying on them being the most important company. Because if it comes down to it, 10, 20 years from now, if we look back and Fanatics is out of the hobby, I don't know what would happen. I don't know where the hobby goes if Fanatics one day just decides, hey, we don't want to be in sports cards anymore. Do they do the thing that that Penn Gaming did with when they wanted to go work with ESPN? They were working with Barstool, and they sold Barstool. They bought Barstool from Portnoy, and then they sold it back to Portnoy for $1, which I don't know exactly how that deal went down. That seems kind of like a little bit of a scam, if you ask me. It really just seems like a tax thing that they were trying to get around here. And especially if they're moving on to ESPN, which from what I've seen, that's been going okay. It hasn't been as good as they expected. But if Fanatics one day decides to do that with Topps, would they just, which I guess, Barstool was owned by Portnoy. So like maybe there isn't like an owner necessarily at Topps. Like there isn't like a Dave Portnoy at Topps, like one individual owner who owns a significant portion of the company. So if, however long they have these licenses for, if they go back and they just say, well, we don't want them, or we don't think that this is going as well as we expected, like, what are they going to do? I don't really know. And I think that's maybe on the more negative side of it. I think on the positive side, they've done an okay job so far. I think that I think they've done an above average job. That's what I would say. I don't think that they've knocked it out of the park, no pun intended, but I think with a lot of the alternative licenses and the alternative stuff that they've tried to do, it's gone pretty well. I don't like what they did with football and basketball this past year. But if they were to come in and say, we want to get into grading, like I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that SGC would be the one to sell to Fanatics. I think PSA is too big. And I think that PSA has changed hands a couple times here. And I think Fanatics has at least enough of a finger on the pulse when it comes to the industry that they could see that SGC is probably going to be more important than Beckett. Now, they might say, well, if we can buy Beckett for cheaper than SGC, then maybe I think that would be interesting as well. Like, depending on the price that each of the companies wants to sell for, if Beckett comes in and they are significantly, like, I don't know, that scene from whatever, the War Dogs, where they have a bunch of like, they're doing government contracts and they are like, oh, we sold one of the contracts for like significantly under what the competition was. Like, if Beckett comes in and does that, like maybe Beckett goes to Fanatics. But I don't know. I think Fanatics has been smart enough that they've bought and they've latched themselves onto, I think, companies within the industry that are really on an upward trajectory. And I think if they were to come in and buy a grading company, I think it would probably be SGC. Now, we have seen Fanatics, they bought PWCC, so they're not afraid to buy brands that are not, well, I don't know. PWCC was doing fine, but like brands that maybe don't have the best reputation, they're not scared to come in and buy those brands, which I think that's what they would do if they were to buy Beckett. And I don't know where they would go really from there if they were to try to buy Beckett. Like, I don't know if they would. I think that they would probably do the same thing with Topps. It probably would just be, I think they would do the same thing with Topps and not the same thing that they did with PWCC, where I think they would keep the branding the same. And I don't even think they would add their logo to anything, but I think, that's right now, for the most part, in my opinion, one of the areas where they haven't jumped in. But there are partnerships, like I said, with Topps. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Fanatics could come in and do something. And maybe it's just a promotion. Like, I don't know if there is a partnership there with Topps. Like, I know that usually in some of the advertising they say like, oh, we're doing this with Topps, but I don't know one way or the other if Topps and Fanatics are actually partnering with SGC. But if they were, I think that's a pretty good move. And I think, and especially now that they have a marketplace where it's like, if they partner with a grading company similar to what Golden does with PSA, like buying cards on Golden and then sending them to PSA and then putting them back in your Golden vault, I could see that happening with SGC. The fact that they're doing already promotions kind of is the reason why I think they could do that. Should they do that? I don't know. I mean, I think it comes down to how people think companies should be doing the hobby. I think I'm putting that in quotations, like how you want to participate in the hobby is different for everybody. So I could see some people liking the idea a lot of the company that's making the cards also grading the cards. But, like I just said, I think I could also see the other side of that where people want a third party grading provider to really come in and give harsh grades or give cards the grade they actually deserve, not give them the grade that people want just because the one company owns the other company. So now that Topps Chrome basketball has been released and everybody's opening it, we're starting to see some of the autographs that are coming out. And I think we got the reason why the product took so long to release. Now, I think football has taken way more time than it should have, which I believe that actually that might be today is the release of the composite football. Right before, actually, no, the season, I guess NFL season doesn't start until next week. So we're 2 weeks out from the start of the regular season. We're getting last year's product. I've already ranted and raved about that, whatever. But it seems that LeBron James, his autographs in this Topps Chrome product, unfortunately, are redemptions. So that would be the reason why they would have waited so long for that product, probably. But I'm sort of, I don't know. I'm almost at a loss for words because the LeBron James, which the only thing I can think of is that like it's going to be a Joe Burrow situation and all these autographs are actually live. They just like missed the deadline because like this is again another reason why, in my opinion, I feel like Topps should have just waited to start making. They should have just kept coming out with some sort of like Wembanyama product or any of the exclusives for basketball, which I guess LeBron technically is an exclusive for basketball. But why they should have just waited on coming out with products because like, which I don't even really, the LeBron thing, I guess the only thing I can think of is that like, because he was playing in the Olympics, but like he was out in the play, which actually this product would have been put together before the Olympics and the playoffs. So I don't know. Again, it just is redemptions are always tricky. And I'm really hoping that these are actually it was just like some sort of misunderstanding or the autographs are live. I'm hoping that they are because that's, I don't know, kind of annoying to me that basically they're the biggest player signs that exclusive. Then he's not in the first product. Then he doesn't have cards in the first product that he's supposed to be in. Like, sure, I understand he was in Bowman basketball, but like that was not like that's different than this. And maybe you could even say, well, maybe Topps and Fanatics not taking basketball very seriously to start out here. That could be potentially the reason why they didn't push to get these autographs or whatever. Because I don't know, it is kind of unfortunate that the biggest player in the league right now, and the reason is because I saw on Twitter that the superfractor was pulled. So it's like, I mean, imagine how, like, that would have been, I wonder what the card looks like. Because the other thing I'm seeing with this product that people are kind of not super stoked about is that they're all sticker autos, which that makes sense, The fact that they're stickers, that doesn't surprise me with this product, because like I said, they would have been putting this product together basically in like the middle of the season. Because at least I don't remember it being announced until, which maybe they have to get everything in place, but it feels like it would have, well, actually, no, I guess it kind of did leak a little bit a couple times with random Topps basketball players posting images of cards. So people knew this was coming, but they're sticker autos. So that's another kind of unfortunate thing here. So I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, maybe the redemptions won't be, and maybe they'll have gotten the cards to LeBron or whatever. I don't know. But so that's on it. I think we're seeing why maybe this product took so long. There isn't really a ton of news really here, kind of at the end of the week. The other big piece that obviously this is probably the biggest piece of news from the past day or so. I would actually say it's a big deal in the hobby. I don't necessarily think it's that big of a deal because just the sense that okay, so sorry, here's the news. Shohei Ohtani signed a huge long-term, I guess, exclusive deal with Topps where he can't even be in other products. Like, he can only be in Topps products, which then obviously that means autographs as well. And I don't really like the exclusive deals in general. So to me, I don't really like the deal. Just from the sense that I don't like the overall concept of the exclusives. But, obviously it's an important piece of news here for Topps because, this is kind of this is sounding similar to how Mike Trout for a while was really just exclusive with Topps. And Topps is kind of moving on because, or maybe that's what it seems like. They're moving on from Mike Trout really kind of being the face of their franchise because he was, I think, for a while, doing like all the top stuff, really just being, I think he was kind of the face of Tops from a baseball perspective. Now, I don't know. Will he have another 2 or 3 good seasons? Like, I don't know. Like, that's kind of the strange thing is with his contract, there's absolutely no reason why he would retire. I just hope we don't get like I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I hope the second half of this contract doesn't turn out bad because, again, these players are human, which is, I always try and empathize with them that way. Like, so imagine you are Mike Trout and you have all these big contracts and then you sign this contract that's like the biggest one up until Shohei Ohtani signed. And it's like, now you're just like, well, I'm good. Like, this is fully guaranteed. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm good or bad. And hopefully people remember the beginning part of his career and that maybe not the end of it, because it's from what it seems like is he is injury. We all knew he was injury prone, but it really seems like these injuries are really catching up to him for whatever reason. And I think that's a reason why Tops is kind of trying to shift a little bit, and they're trying to move towards maybe a new face of the franchise is one way to put it. And I think putting the athletes first is smart. I think if you're putting, if you are using an athlete, you're almost doing like a billboard, I think. And this is maybe a different way to think about it. Like, if you make Shohei Ohtani you're the face of your brand, whenever he goes out and plays a baseball game, there's going to be a decent amount of people who, similar to, no, maybe not. I guess it's kind of the billboard aspect of it. People driving down, no, actually, that doesn't really work. But him going out there, and some people are going to associate him with Tops. That's just kind of the point. The billboard doesn't exactly work, but like maybe a moving billboard, I don't know, maybe like the New Year's or the blimp or something like that. But they're clearly moving towards that. I think it's probably pretty smart. I mean, he seems like he's going to be one of the best players of all time. So if you can, I don't know. I mean, these are the kind of interesting things about these deals. It's like, if you look at it, you kind of wonder what it's going to look like in 5-10 years from now. Like, is whatever he signed going to look like a steal because he's just going to continue to grow his brand here in the United States and globally? Because that could also be a potential reason why they're trying to sign him, because he is kind of a global superstar. Like, Japan, I think, as a whole, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if they're trying to get the Japanese market by signing this player, but like, I think that they have realistically, they would have a better shot at doing that than kind of trying to roll out Mike Trout, I guess, in a way. But like, overall, I think Ohtani has shown that he's like the best player in the league potentially. And like, he's going to be a generational talent. So, hopefully he kind of continues this. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but like with Trout, for example, for a while, he was really going to be like that guy. Like, he was supposed to be just like the next, Mantle. Like, everybody was touting him as like, if you want to get a baseball player that's the most safe in the league right now, it's him. And it's really not. I mean, I think LeBron, for example, him and LeBron had similar trajectories other than championships, obviously, but like in game on field statistics, I think that they had very comparable careers up until the second half of Trout's career, where he has just been injury prone after getting injured after injured and missing multiple seasons. Like, to LeBron's credit, I don't think he's missed that many games realistically from an injury. Like, I don't know if he's ever had a season ending injury that I can think of, where Trout, Trout has gotten season ending injuries before the season even started. So it's like, it's unfortunate that, I don't know, he has done this, like, he has become kind of, well, no, it's not. I mean, I don't want to put blame on him, though. That's kind of the thing. It's like, if he's getting injured, you can't really fault him for getting injured. It's not his fault. It is just unfortunate. So, those are kind of the two stories here that we're going to end the week with. I think I did this on last Friday's episode. Make sure that if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to maybe leave us a review. Go check out the YouTube channel. Danny's putting out tons of great interviews. And then the Saturday episode, that's going to be obviously coming up tomorrow. That will be a recap of everything from this past week. And that's basically all I've got for this week. So thank you all for listening. Do all the things I just said to do because I'm not going to say them again because I just listed all of them. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next week.